The discovery, the void between stars held secrets, and tonight, one of them was about to shatter the fragile peace of the galaxy. Captain Davian Moore stood on the observation deck of the Wayfinder, his reflection ghosted against the viewport where distant nebulae painted the darkness in shades of violet and amber. Behind him, the soft footsteps he'd learned to recognize approached. "You're thinking too loud again," Lieutenant Nora Vex said, her voice carrying that mixture of amusement and concern he'd come to crave during their 3 years together in deep space. Davian smiled without turning. "Just watching the stars. They're quieter than my thoughts." Nora moved beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth, but not so close that the bridge crew might notice. Regulations forbade relationships between officers, especially captain and lieutenant. But regulations hadn't spent months in the black, where every moment could be your last. "We got the recall order," she said quietly. "All human vessels within 6 sectors are returning to Earth immediately." He finally looked at her. Nora's dark eyes reflected the starlight, and for a moment Davian forgot about protocols and duty. "Did they say why?" "Classified. But the encryption level suggests something significant." She hesitated, then added in a whisper, "Davian, I'm scared. The last time they pulled everyone back was before the Outer Colonies conflict." He wanted to take her hand, to promise everything would be fine, but he couldn't. "Not here. We'll know soon enough." What neither of them knew was that 200,000 kilometers away, Ambassador Kelrin of the Dominion was experiencing a fear far more immediate. The observation post designated Epsilon 7 had been Kelrin's assignment for 12 cycles, a comfortable exile from Dominion politics, watching humanity's small exploration vessels drift through their claimed territory. Humans were insignificant, their ships barely worthy of the sensors needed to track them. Tonight, those sensors were screaming, "Ambassador!" The technician's voice cracked across the command center. "The readings, they can't be accurate. The system must be malfunctioning." Kelrin's 4 fingers danced across the holographic display, calling up the data himself. His secondary heart began racing when he saw the numbers. The energy signature emerging from human space was massive, larger than anything in the Dominion's fleet, larger than the ancient dreadnoughts that had ended the last galactic war. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered, his voice steady despite the dread pooling in his chest. The view screen shifted, and Kelrin's breath caught. A ship was emerging from the distortion of faster-than-light travel. But calling it a ship felt inadequate. It was a mountain given motion, a fortress wrapped in metal and fury. The hull stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons arrays that made the observation post's defenses look like children's toys. The armor plating was thick, brutal, designed without any consideration for aesthetic grace. This wasn't a vessel built to inspire awe. It was built to survive anything the galaxy could throw at it, and to strike back harder. "Identify it," Kelrin whispered. The technician's fingers trembled as he worked. Ambassador, it's of human origin. Every signature matches their industrial patterns, their metallurgical processes. They built this. Impossible." The word echoed in Kelrin's mind, but the evidence hung before him, undeniable. Humanity, mocked for centuries as clumsy newcomers, had constructed something that should have taken millennia of advancement. "What's it doing?" he asked. "Nothing. It's just drifting, moving slowly through the system. Almost as if," the technician paused, "almost as if it wants to be seen." Kelrin understood immediately. This wasn't an invasion. It was a message. He activated the quantum relay, knowing this transmission would reach the Dominion Council within hours. His report would shake the foundations of galactic power. But as he began composing his words, Kelrin found himself wondering, if humanity could build one such vessel, how many more waited in the shadows? Aboard the Wayfinder, Davian watched the stars until the jump to Earth was ready. Nora had returned to her station, but he could still feel the ghost of her presence beside him. "Captain!" his communications officer called out. "We're being hailed by Fleet Command. They want to speak with you immediately. Eyes-only transmission." Davian moved to his ready room, the door sealing behind him. Admiral Cross's face appeared on the screen, and even through the light years of distance, he could see the fire in her expression. "Captain Morse, what you're about to hear is classified at the highest level," she began. "Humanity has just changed the balance of power in this galaxy, and you're going to be part of what comes next." As she spoke, Davian understood why the recall had been issued. He understood the secrecy, the urgency, and he understood that the life he'd known, the quiet exploration, the stolen moments with Nora, the peaceful voyages through empty space, was ending. The galaxy had seen humanity's creation, and nothing would ever be the same. In the silence of his ready room, Davian Morse realized he was afraid. Not of what the future held, but of what it might cost, especially if it cost him the woman he loved. The Council's Fear the Dominion Council chambers had stood for 10,000 years, carved from a single crystalline mountain on the capital world of Theron Prime. Today, those ancient walls echoed with something they had rarely contained: panic. High Magistrate Vorath stood at the center of the circular chamber, his tall frame rigid as the holographic projection of humanity's dreadnought rotated above him. Around the chamber, representatives from 47 species watched in varying states of disbelief and horror. "This cannot be allowed to stand," declared Councillor Zethris, his voice sharp. "Humanity has violated every principle of measured advancement. They've leaped beyond their station." Vorath raised a hand for silence, his three eyes fixed on the projection, studying every detail of the vessel's construction. "The question is not whether we allow it, Councillor. The question is what we can do about it." "Preemptive strike," suggested General Vracus from the military section. "Destroy their shipyards before more can be built, and if they already have more." Vorath countered, "If this vessel was revealed precisely because they have others waiting, an attack could trigger the very war we wish to avoid." The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. 3 star systems away, on Earth, a very different meeting was unfolding. Jaren Wells stood before the Human Defense Council, a room of faces he'd spent 5 years avoiding. Among them, wearing the uniform of a colonel, sat Mira Thane. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Jaren forced his attention to the chairman. "Dr. Wells," the chairman began, "your project has succeeded beyond expectation. The vindication has been observed by multiple alien powers. Now we need to know, how quickly can we build more?" Jaren's fingers tightened around his data tablet. "The prototype took 3 years with our entire industrial capacity focused on it. To build a fleet, we'd need to militarize every orbital factory, redirect resources from the colonies, and conscript every engineer capable of—" "How quickly, Doctor?" Colonel Thane interrupted, her voice cold and professional. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Mira's face was composed, but he saw the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw clenched. 5 years since he'd chosen the project over their life together. 5 years since he'd told her the work was too important, that they could wait. 18 months for the second dreadnought, he said quietly. 9 months after that for each subsequent vessel, assuming we perfect the process. "Not fast enough," said Admiral Cross from her seat. "If the Dominion decides to strike, they could mobilize their fleet in weeks." "Then perhaps," Mira said, standing, "we should focus on making them believe we already have more ships. Let them think the Vindication is merely the first of an existing fleet." The room buzzed with discussion. Jaren watched Mira as she outlined her strategy, a carefully orchestrated campaign of misinformation, strategic deployments of the single dreadnought to multiple sectors, and encrypted communications designed to be intercepted. "It's a bluff," someone objected. "It's survival," Mira countered. "We buy time for Dr. Wells to build what we need." After the meeting, Jaren caught up with Mira in the corridor outside. "That was brilliant. She didn't slow down." "It's my job, Doctor." "Mira, please." She stopped, turning to face him. The corridor was empty, the walls sterile white metal. "You made your choice, Jaren. You chose steel and engines over us." "Over me. I chose to save humanity," he said, the words sounding weak even to himself. "And what did I choose?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I chose to keep living while you disappeared into your work. I chose to move forward when you couldn't. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me, Jaren. You abandoned me." She took a breath, composing herself. "But that was 5 years ago. Now we have work to do, and we'll do it professionally. The chairman has assigned me as military liaison to your project. We'll be working together whether we like it or not." He wanted to say so many things, to explain the nights he'd stayed awake thinking of her, the times he'd almost quit and returned. But the words stuck in his throat, understood. "Colonel," he finally managed. As she walked away, Jaren felt the weight of his choices settle heavier on his shoulders than any dreadnought's armor. Back on Theron Prime, Vorath had made his decision. "We will not strike first," he announced to the council. "But we will prepare. I want every fleet commander on alert. I want intelligence operatives in human space immediately, and I want our scientists to analyze everything we know about this vessel. And if the humans strike us," Counselor Zethris demanded. Vorath's expression darkened. "Then we will learn whether our ancient fleets can match their new ambition." In the observation post, Ambassador Kelrin continued watching the human dreadnought as it drifted through space. His report had been sent. His duty was complete, but he couldn't look away from the vessel. It moved with purpose, even in its apparent stillness. Every weapon array tracked invisible targets. Every sensor sweep painted the void with invisible light. This was a predator, patient and aware. Kelrin had served the Dominion for 40 years. He'd seen wars, negotiations, the rise and fall of lesser species, but he'd never seen anything that inspired this particular flavor of dread. Humanity had been underestimated. And that mistake, Kelrin feared, would cost the galaxy dearly. On Earth, in a private apartment overlooking the sprawling megacity of New Geneva, Jaren sat alone with a glass of whiskey he wasn't drinking. His datapad showed the schematics of the second dreadnought, but his mind was elsewhere. He pulled up an old photograph, him and Mira at the beach, her laughing at something he'd said, his arm around her waist. They'd been so certain of their future then. So naive, the irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built a ship to protect humanity's future, but he'd destroyed his own in the process. Tomorrow, they'd begin construction on the second vessel. Tomorrow, he'd face Mira again in planning meetings. Tomorrow, the galaxy would inch closer to whatever breaking point waited in the darkness. But tonight, Jaren Wells sat alone with his regrets, wondering if the price of salvation could ever be worth paying. The Message Admiral Helena Cross had commanded ships for 30 years, but she'd never given an order that would echo across the entire galaxy, until now. The broadcast chamber was stark, just a single camera, a neutral background, and the weight of humanity's future resting on her shoulders. Behind the camera, Vice Admiral Torrin Shade made final adjustments to the transmission array. "We're ready when you are," Torrin said, his voice carrying the steadiness she'd relied on for the past decade. Helena straightened her uniform. "How many will receive this?" "Every major government, every trade hub, every military installation within 500 light years. They won't be able to ignore it, and they won't be able to block it." She nodded, taking a breath. Torrin caught her eye, and for a moment the professional mask slipped. She saw concern there and something deeper, something they'd never acknowledged in all their years serving together. "Helena," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time in months. "Whatever happens after this, know that you're doing the right thing. And if I'm wrong, if this pushes them toward war instead of peace," he moved closer, stopping just at the edge of propriety, "then we fight. But at least they'll know we're not afraid." The moment stretched between them, charged with everything unspoken. Then Helena turned to the camera, and her expression became steel. "Begin transmission." The camera activated. Across the galaxy, screens flickered to life. "This is Admiral Helena Cross of the United Terran Fleet," she began, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "By now you've all seen what we've built. You've run your scans, held your meetings, and felt your fear. I'm here to tell you that your fear is justified." In the Dominion Council chambers, Vorath leaned forward as the human admiral's face filled the display. "For centuries, you've dismissed us as primitive. You've laughed at our ambitions and mocked our ships. You've treated us as children stumbling through your ancient playground." Helena's eyes seemed to pierce through the screen. "That time is over." "The audacity," Counselor Zethris breathed, but Vorath raised a hand for silence, listening. "We didn't build the Vindication to conquer you," Helena continued. "We built it because we're tired of being vulnerable, tired of being the youngest species at the table, the ones everyone assumes they can push around. You forced us to become this. Your contempt made us strong." In the broadcast chamber, Torrin watched Helena with something close to awe. He'd seen her in battle, in negotiations, in moments of impossible decision. But this was different. This was her defining moment. "We're extending this message not as a declaration of war, but as a statement of fact," Helena said. "Humanity is no longer a minor power. We have the capability, the will, and the resolve to defend ourselves. If you come at us with peace, you'll find willing partners. But if you come at us with violence," she paused, letting the silence carry its own weight, "you'll find we're very good at answering violence." The transmission ended. Helena's shoulders sagged slightly as the camera deactivated. "It's done," Torin said. "The message is propagating through every network. By tomorrow, every sentient being in this sector will have heard it." "And then what?" Helena asked, suddenly exhausted. "Then we wait and see who blinks first." She turned to him, and the vulnerability in her expression caught him off guard. "Torin, if this goes wrong, if I just started a war—" "You didn't," he interrupted, closing the distance between them. "Professional protocols be damned. You did what needed to be done, and whatever comes next, you won't face it alone." His hand found hers, and for a moment, they stood in the empty chamber. Two people carrying the weight of billions. "I can't afford distractions," Helena whispered. "Not now." "I'm not a distraction," Torin replied softly. "I'm your anchor, and I have been for years, whether you acknowledged it or not." Before she could respond, the comm system chimed. "Admiral, we have an incoming vessel requesting permission to dock." "They're claiming diplomatic immunity." Helena pulled away, the moment shattered by duty. "Identification?" They say they're from the Concordat of Velis. Ambassador Solara is requesting an immediate audience." Torin frowned. "The Concordat has never contacted us directly. They're neutral in most galactic affairs." "Apparently not anymore," Helena said, her command mask sliding back into place. "Grant docking permission. And Torin, have security ready, but keep them discreet." 2 hours later, Helena sat across from Ambassador Solara in the station's diplomatic lounge. The alien was striking. Her species shared some external features common to many humanoid races, but her silver skin caught the light like liquid metal, and her presence carried an unsettling intensity. "Your message was quite bold." "Admiral," Solara said, her voice melodious but with an edge underneath. "It has created considerable chaos." "That was the intention, was it?" Solara leaned forward. "Or did you hope for something else? Perhaps allies?" Helena kept her expression neutral. "We hoped for respect." "You may receive more than that." Solara produced a data crystal. "The Concordat has remained neutral for centuries, Admiral. But we've grown weary of the Dominion's arrogance. Your dreadnought has revealed something important, that the old powers are not invincible." "You're offering an alliance?" "I'm offering information," Solara corrected. "What you do with it is your choice." She slid the crystal across the table. "High Magistrate Vorath is facing internal pressure to strike at humanity preemptively. There are those in the Dominion who believe a quick, decisive attack could eliminate your shipyards before you build more vessels." Helena's blood ran cold. "When?" "Soon. Within weeks, perhaps days. But there are also those who counsel patience, who fear you already have more ships than you've revealed." Solara's eyes glittered. "Do you, Admiral? Or was the vindication your only card?" The question hung between them like a blade. Torin, watching from his position near the door, tensed. This could be a trap, a way to extract critical intelligence. Helena smiled slightly. "Ambassador, if I told you we only had one dreadnought, would you believe me? And if I told you we had a fleet, would that be any more credible?" Solara laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Well played. Uncertainty is its own weapon." "Why are you really here?" Helena asked. "The Concordat doesn't involve itself without expecting something in return." "Because the galaxy is changing, Admiral Cross, and we'd rather shape that change than be crushed by it." Solara stood. "The information on that crystal includes fleet movements, council deliberations, and communication protocols. Use it wisely." As she moved toward the door, she paused beside Torin. "Your Vice Admiral watches you the way a man watches something precious," she said to Helena. "You should acknowledge that before this war takes everything from you." Then she was gone, leaving Helena and Torin in stunned silence. "She's right," Torin said finally. "About the intelligence?" "About us." He crossed to where she sat. "Helena, we might not have much time. The Dominion could strike tomorrow. Everything could end before—" She stood, cutting him off. "Before what, Torin? Before we admit what we've both known for years? Before we acknowledge that every regulation keeping us apart means nothing compared to what we feel?" "Yes," he said simply. Helena looked at him, truly looked at him. seeing not just her second-in-command but the man who'd stood beside her through every crisis, every loss, every victory. After this, she said quietly, after we know whether we'll survive the next few weeks. If we're still here. She touched his face gently. Then we'll talk about us. It wasn't a confession of love. It wasn't a promise of future. But it was hope, fragile and precious. And in a galaxy teetering on the edge of war, hope was the rarest commodity of all. The Fracture Commander Jonas Reed had never expected to captain a dreadnought. Hell, 6 months ago, he'd been running freight routes between Mars and the Jupiter colonies. But humanity needed experienced captains, and apparently experienced now meant anyone who's kept a ship from exploding. The Retribution, humanity's second dreadnought, hung in space above Earth's moon. Still incomplete, but already terrifying. Jonas stood on the bridge, watching construction crews swarm over the hull like determined insects. It's beautiful, in a brutal sort of way, said Dr. Olivia Kane from beside him. Jonas glanced at the xenobiologist who'd been assigned as his chief science officer. Olivia had been studying alien cultures for 15 years, and her insights had proven invaluable in understanding the psychological warfare humanity was now waging. Beautiful isn't the word I'd use, Jonas replied. Necessary, maybe. Terrifying, definitely. Both can be true. Olivia moved closer to the viewport, her reflection ghosting over the stars. You know what scares me most? Not that we built this, but that we had to. Jonas understood. They'd been thrust into roles neither had trained for, commanding a vessel designed for destruction, navigating political waters that could drown them all. Over the past months, as the Retribution took shape, Jonas and Olivia had spent countless hours together, planning, strategizing, and somewhere along the way, becoming something more than colleagues. Coffee? Olivia asked, already knowing his answer. Always. They moved to his ready room, the door sealing behind them. In the privacy of the small space, some of the command masts could slip away. I intercepted something, Olivia said, her voice dropping. Dominion Communications. They're using an older encryption, something I studied years ago. Jonas set down his cup. What did they say? General Kirax is gathering support for a preemptive strike. He's convinced half the military command that humanity is preparing an invasion fleet. He wants to hit us first, hard enough that we can't respond. When? Soon, maybe within days. Olivia's hand shook slightly as she pulled up the data on her tablet. Jonas, if Kirax moves against us before the Retribution is ready, before we have a real fleet, we'll be vulnerable, he finished. One dreadnought can't defend all human space. They stood in silence, the weight of the intelligence pressing down on them. I should tell Fleet Command, Jonas said. You should. Olivia looked at him, her eyes reflecting worry and something deeper. But they'll want us to deploy immediately. Take the Retribution out incomplete. Use her to show force. That's suicide. The ship isn't ready. Half our weapon systems are offline. The reactor is running at 60% capacity. I know. Olivia moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle that reminded him of earth gardens. Jonas, if we go out there, there's a good chance we won't come back. He reached up, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. Then I'm glad I'm with you. Don't, she whispered. Don't make this harder than it already is. Make what harder? Acknowledging that in the middle of this nightmare, I found something worth fighting for? Olivia closed her eyes. We can't. Not now. Not when everything is so uncertain. When is anything certain? Jonas cupped her face gently. Olivia, I've been alone for years, flying cargo ships through empty space, telling myself I didn't need anyone. Then you walked onto my bridge with your alien cultural databases and your terrible jokes, and everything changed. My jokes aren't terrible, she protested weakly. They're awful, he said, smiling. But I love them. I love you. The words hung between them, crystalline and fragile. Olivia opened her eyes, and he saw tears there. This is the worst possible timing. I know. We could die in the next few days. I know. And if we survive, the regulations... To hell with regulations, Jonas said. The galaxy is falling apart around us. The old rules don't apply anymore. She kissed him then, desperate and fierce, as if trying to pack a lifetime of feeling into one moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "We still have to report to Fleet Command," Olivia said. "We will. After." "After what?" Jonas smiled. "After we steal one more hour where the galaxy doesn't get to tell us what to do." But the galaxy had other plans. The comm system shrieked to life. "Commander Reed, we're detecting massive hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple vessels, Dominion signatures. They're here!" Jonas and Olivia rushed to the bridge. The tactical display showed dozens of ships emerging from faster-than-light travel, a full Dominion battle fleet led by General Kyrax's flagship. "Red alert," Jonas ordered. "All hands to battle stations." "Contact Fleet Command and tell them, 'Sir, they're hailing us,'" the communications officer interrupted. "General Kyrax wants to speak with you directly." Jonas exchanged a glance with Olivia. "Put him through." The view screen filled with the image of an imposing alien general, his scaled features twisted in determination. "Human vessel," Kyrax began, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have 48 hours to withdraw all military assets from this system and submit to Dominion inspection of your shipyards. If you refuse, we will consider it an act of war." "This is human space," Jonas replied, keeping his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "You have no authority here. I have 50 warships that say otherwise." Kyrax leaned forward. "Your dreadnought is impressive, but it's incomplete. We've been watching your construction. You cannot fight us all." Jonas felt the eyes of his bridge crew on him. One word from him could start a war that would consume billions of lives. "Stand down, General," he said. "Withdraw your fleet. We have no desire for conflict. Then submit to our terms." "Never." Kyrax's expression darkened. "Then you have chosen extinction. 48 hours, human. Use them wisely." The transmission cut off. The bridge was silent. Jonas looked at the tactical display, at the Dominion fleet arrayed against them like a noose tightening. "Orders, Commander?" his tactical officer asked quietly. Jonas glanced at Olivia. She nodded slightly, a gesture of trust and support. "We prepare for battle," Jonas said, "and we pray that help arrives before those 48 hours run out." As the crew sprang into action, Jonas pulled Olivia aside. "If this goes bad, it won't," she interrupted. "But if it does, I want you to know—" "I know," she said, squeezing his hand. "I've always known. In the cold mathematics of war, the retribution was outmatched and outgunned. But Jonas Reed had learned something in his years flying through the void. Sometimes, the greatest weapon wasn't firepower or armor. Sometimes, it was the willingness to stand firm when everyone expected you to break." And as he looked at his crew, at Olivia standing beside him, Jonas Reed decided that if humanity was going to make it stand, there was nowhere he'd rather be than right here, on the bridge of an incomplete dreadnought, facing impossible odds. The countdown had begun. 48 hours until war. The galaxy held its breath. The new Dawn President Marcus Webb had not slept in 36 hours. The Situation Room beneath Geneva pulsed with activity, staff officers coordinating fleet movements, intelligence analysts parsing Dominion communications, diplomats frantically reaching out to potential allies. "Commander Reed is holding position," Admiral Cross reported, her image flickering on the main display. "The Retribution isn't ready for combat, but he's refusing to back down." "Brave or foolish?" someone muttered. "Both," Webb said. "And exactly what we need right now." "What's the status of the Vindication?" "En route to Jonas's position," Cross replied. "But even 2 dreadnoughts won't be enough against Kyrax's full fleet." Webb rubbed his temples. The weight of every human life pressed down on him. One wrong decision, and humanity's brief moment of relevance would end in fire. "Mr. President," his chief of staff interrupted, "we have an incoming transmission. It's Ambassador Irina of the Concordat, and she says she speaks for a coalition." Webb's head snapped up. "Coalition? What coalition?" "Put her through." The display shifted, showing an elegant alien woman, different from Solara but with the same silver-tinged skin that marked the Concordat species. "President Webb," Irina began, her voice carrying unexpected warmth. "I understand you're facing a crisis. The Concordat would like to help. Why?" Webb asked bluntly. "What's in it for you?" Irina smiled. "Honesty. How refreshing." "The truth is simple, Mr. President. The Dominion has ruled through fear for too long. Your species has shown that their power isn't absolute. Many of us have been waiting for this moment. We just needed someone brave enough to stand first. You're offering military support? Better. We're offering a coalition of 17 species willing to stand beside you. Not to fight your war, but to make it clear that an attack on humanity would have consequences beyond what Kyrax has calculated. Webb felt hope kindle in his chest. And in return? Recognition. A seat at the table. The understanding that the galaxy's power structure is changing, and we want humanity as an ally in shaping what comes next. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was a chance. Send me the terms, Webb said. We don't have much time. 12 hours remained on Kyrax's ultimatum. Aboard the Retribution, Jonas and Olivia stood on the bridge, watching the Dominion fleet maneuver into attack formations. The Vindication will be here in 4 hours, Olivia reported, her voice tight with tension. But Kyrax is moving up his timetable. He's planning to strike before reinforcements arrive. Jonas nodded grimly. They'd known this moment was coming. The Retribution would have to hold alone. All hands, this is the commander, Jonas announced over the ship-wide comm. In a few minutes, we're going to face an enemy that outnumbers us 25-1. They expect us to run. They expect us to break. They're wrong. He felt Olivia's presence beside him, steadying. We're not here to win a battle, Jonas continued. We're here to buy time. Time for help to arrive. Time for humanity to show the galaxy that we don't surrender. Every minute we hold is a minute closer to survival. So let's make them remember us. The crew erupted in defiant cheers. Olivia touched his arm. Jonas, if we don't make it, we will, he said firmly. Then softer. But if we don't, at least I'll be with you at the end. The Dominion fleet opened fire. The Retribution shuddered as energy beams hammered into her incomplete shields. Jonas gripped his command chair, calling out orders as his crew fought back with everything they had. Target their lead destroyer. Fire all forward batteries! The Dreadnought's weapons spoke, and when they spoke, ships died. The Retribution might have been incomplete, but what they'd finished was terrifying. Dominion vessels exploded in flowers of fire as humanity's weapons found their marks. They're regrouping, the tactical officer shouted. Concentrating fire on our port side. Evasive maneuvers. Divert all power to shields. The battle raged, minutes stretching into eternity. The Retribution held, bleeding atmosphere and sparking from a dozen wounds, but still fighting. Then, like angels descending from heaven, new signatures appeared on the scanners. Sir, Olivia's voice cracked with emotion. Multiple ships dropping from hyperspace. It's the Vindication, and... My God, there are dozens of them. The Coalition fleet is here. Jonas felt tears of relief sting his eyes. On the view screen, a magnificent sight unfolded. The Vindication leading a combined fleet of 17 species. All converging on Kyrax's position. Admiral Cross's voice came through on the comm, strong and clear. Commander Reed, stand down and let us finish this. The Dominion fleet, faced with overwhelming numbers, began to scatter. Kyrax's flagship tried to maintain formation, but when two Concordat cruisers locked weapons on his bridge, even his arrogance faltered. This isn't over, Kyrax transmitted to the combined fleet. The Dominion will not forget this. Then remember it well, Admiral Cross replied. Remember that humanity doesn't stand alone anymore. Remember that your age of unchallenged power has ended, and remember that we gave you every chance to choose peace. Kyrax's fleet withdrew, jumping to hyperspace in disorder. The battle was over. Humanity had won. 3 days later, President Webb stood in the Hall of Nations on Earth, facing representatives from across the galaxy. The room had been built just for this moment, the formal recognition of humanity as a galactic power. Ambassador Irina approached, carrying the Accord of Stars, a document that would reshape galactic politics for generations. President Webb, she said formally, on behalf of the Coalition, we welcome humanity to the community of recognized powers. Your courage has inspired us all. Webb signed the document, his hand steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Across the solar system, on the observation deck of the Wayfinder, Davian Morse and Nora Vex stood together, watching Earth shine against the darkness. It's really over, Nora whispered. No, Davian said, taking her hand openly for the first time. It's really beginning. On the Retribution, repairs were underway. Jonas and Olivia walked the damaged corridors, assessing the work to be done. We made it, Olivia said, still sounding surprised. Jonas pulled her close. We did, and now we have a future to figure out. Together? She asked. Always. In the Dominion capital, High Magistrate Vorath watched the news of the accord signing. The shame of retreat burned, but beneath it, a cold understanding grew. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through conquest, but through defiance. They'd shown that the old order could be challenged, and that knowledge once released could never be contained. President Webb returned to his office after the ceremony. He was exhausted, but for the first time in months, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. His chief of staff entered. Mr. President, congratulations. We did it. No, Webb said, looking out at Earth below. They did it. Every captain who held the line, every engineer who built what seemed impossible, every citizen who believed we could be more than what others said we were. He paused, then added, the galaxy laughed at us once. They called us reckless, primitive, dangerous. Maybe we were. Maybe we still are. But we're also strong. We're also free. And we're also done apologizing for existing. The chief of staff smiled. What's next? Webb turned from the window, and in his eyes burned the fire of humanity's new purpose. Next, we build, we grow. We stand with our new allies and show the galaxy what we're really capable of. Not weapons of war, but wonders of peace. We prove that we earned our place at the table. Far above Earth, the vindication and retribution hung in space, monuments to humanity's determination. They would build more ships. They would face new challenges. But they would face them as equals now, not as children begging for scraps of respect. That night, across human space, people looked up at the stars with new eyes. The galaxy had seemed so vast, so impossible, but humanity had reached out and grasped it. Davian and Nora, finally free to love openly, made plans for their future, a future that now stretched to the stars themselves. Jonas and Olivia, battered but unbroken, began to imagine what came after survival, a life built on more than just duty, and in quiet corners across the galaxy, other species whispered of the humans who'd refused to bow, who'd built impossible ships, who'd changed everything. The old powers would adapt or fade. New alliances would form and fracture. Wars would come and peace would follow as they always did. But one truth remained, carved into the hull of every human dreadnought, written in the hearts of every person who'd lived through these days. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence that had once held fear now held promise, and in that promise a new dawn rose, bright, uncertain, and gloriously human.